Welcome to the Red Half of Sheffield preview pod for another preview episode. And this time, we're going down south. We are going down south. I particularly was looking forward to this fixture, because I'm just interested by this team. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Portsmouth. We play them on Saturday. Fratton Park is the destination. And I am joined by Freddie from the PO4Cast. Freddie, how are you doing this early AM United States time, early afternoon UK time?
Oh, I'm doing very well, Chad. Thanks for having me on. And we'll probably go into it a little bit more. But yeah, Pompey are taking a while to adjust to Championship football again, as expected by many, to be honest.
Yeah, well, get into it. I watched a majority of your defeat to Burnley, the greatest team in the history of the world. We know how great Burnley are. Oh my God, JJ Watt. Oh God. So sum it up. I mean, you guys were in it for a majority of the game and then fell victim to a late winner by Burnley. Tell us, you were there. Sum it up.
Yeah, I was in the away end at the time, and I thought Pompey played incredibly well for the first 60 minutes. Put in some new faces. Finally had a settled back four again, because we'll go into it a little bit later, but the team has been ravaged by injuries since the start of the season. So we had our first and second choice centre-half pairing in. Also tried out a new midfielder in Freddie Potts, who was excellent, alongside Marlon Pack, the club captain. And a lot of it just worked. Burnley wasted a lot of chances, but in the meantime, Pompey were able to be quite comfortable on the ball. And then the work for Callum Lang's goal was exceptional. Finally got Jacob Murphy on the ball, slipped into Paddy Lane, and then another low crossover to Callum Lang. And it was 1-0, and Burnley didn't look like scoring at all. But then on the 60th minute, we started to make substitutions. I'm not sure why. I assume it's either fitness or tactical. And then for about the 60th minute, it just fell away. The shape and the structure of the team just fell out immediately when the depth players sort of started playing. Sarmiento had way too much space on that left-hand side, and obviously he's a player of exceptional talent. Stuck it right in the bottom corner for 1-1. And then made 3 substitutions where we're playing a winger in attacking midfield, playing a winger up front, brought on another winger who hasn't played very well. And again, the structure of the game just fell completely. I think the only reason why, from a tactical point of view, was just fresh legs to try and press Burnley a lot, because they struggled against Pompey's press all game. So fresh legs to try and keep them up on that, and then hit them on the break again to try and make it 2-1, but it just didn't work. Mm-hmm. And then with the lack of structure in midfield, Burnley had all the time in the world, and I was waiting for them to score for about the last half an hour of the game. So no, the result wasn't a surprise. The manager came out and said he was furious with the players, because effectively it was points thrown away, even though before the game Pompey had little chance of winning the game. But to be able to lose it like that was the first time in a long time that Pompey have thrown points away, because last season of the League One, I lost 5 games all season. Mm-hmm. Played him very incredibly well, very consistent, champions of that division. And I could probably count 1 or 2, 3 games where he threw points away. And if it was a draw, it was a fair result. So no, very gutting for the fans, and there's going to be a lot of going over that game later on.
And so I'll say this, as you mentioned the League One campaign last year. Is it almost some Pompey fans need to get a dose of reality after you, as you mentioned, only lost 5 games, or was it a realization like, hey, we're going up a level, we're going to struggle, and, these defeats at the beginning of the season, it's kind of like, this is a weird feeling, or were you already kind of locked into, all right, we're going to have a few defeats this year. We're not going to lose 5. If we only lose 5, we're probably going to get automatically promoted. What's the sentiment of the Pompey fan base coming into this season?
I think it's a bit of both from what you mentioned. A lot of Pompey fans think that if the Blues can stay up in the division, even if it's low mid-table, just outside of relegation, that's success, because the team hasn't been in Championship since 2012. Mm-hmm. So it's been an awfully long time. And financially, people talk about, I bet especially in America, they love the Premier League football. The gap between Premier League football and Championship football financially is absurd. Mm-hmm. And that gap is now just as big with Championship and League One sides. Oh, yeah. So I think one of our local broadcasters did like what he called a back of an envelope calculation with budgets and finances, and figured out that Pompey's playing budget is about 15 million quid, just over.
Really?
And obviously Sheffield United probably have another sides relegated from the Premier League have probably signed players for that amount of money. So just as a bit of that shows where Portsmouth are in the pecking order. But most fans think that simply stabilise themselves in the division and then go from there. Essentially, had to sign a lot of players because released a lot of depth players over the summer who weren't going to be good enough for their level anyway. Brought in a lot of players in. It's going to take all those time for those players to gel. Signing players from abroad, signing younger players in backup roles as well. So there's a little bit of worry with that, whether they can step up when asked to. And as we saw in the Burnley game, they didn't, unfortunately. But that was a mix of the manager's tactical decisions and the players in that one. It's not one or the other. But the fixture list for Pompey has been absurd. I've never known a fixture list start that hard. Playing in the first couple of months, every single team relegated from the Premier League, as well as Middlesbrough, Leeds, and West Bromwich Albion, who are pretty much all going to finish top 6, presumably, predicted-wise. So to get to get draws from Leeds away and Middlesbrough away, that was very good. The draw against Luton looks worse, considering that they haven't performed as expected. I thought they'd be much better than they were. But again, a draw against the relegated Premier League side isn't horrendous, even though they went down to 10 men.
No.
Against Sunderland and West Brom, simply beaten by better sides. Ultimately, they went a couple of goals up and then shut it down. And then the Burnley game threw points away. So that's where Portsmouth are in the pecking order at the moment. So immediately, fans are immediately thinking, even after this game against Sheffield United, they're immediately thinking to the next crop of fixtures where we're playing. Oh, I have to check this when I'm on mute. Off the top of my head, Oxford United, Queen's Park Rangers, other sides to the middle and lower steps of the division to finally get those wins.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, watching sports, if a side goes on a run where they're playing quite well but not getting the result, that could continue months ahead, even against opposition that are a bit worse.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It certainly does set up interestingly for Pompey coming in the next few games. One question. This is something that has been on my mind for years, and now I finally have the chance. What was it like being a Pompey fan, going through all the trials and tribulations over the last, 15, 20 years? If you can, for the viewers, sum it up what's happened. And if they don't know and they're just tuning in, kind of give a little backstory of what happened to inevitably watch your fall to League Two and then your inevitable rise to the championship. And is the goal, I mean, I say this to everybody, the end-all be-all goal is to get to the Premier League. But is that a realistic expectation for Pompey supporters, or is this as high as it's going to go?
Okay, so I'll try and sum it up as best I can. You're talking about Pompey's time in the Premier League for multiple years in the 2000s. I was small at the time, 27. Pompey won the FA Cup in 2008. I still remember that when I was 11 years old. Couldn't get a ticket because the ticket sold out immediately against Cardiff. It was a 1-0 win, had international players of high calibre. I think the biggest thing for me was when I was a kid looking at it and going, hang on, Portsmouth have England internationals playing for them. So David James, Glenn Johnson, Sol Campbell. You could reel off all the brilliant players who have played for Portsmouth in that time. And effectively, a lot of that was down to the fact that we had a foreign owner when Portsmouth got up to the Premier League, but he was a sensible foreign owner, Milan Mandrić. He, ironically enough, he owned Sheffield Wednesday for a little bit. So Sheffield United fans would be quite happy. But he owned the team for a little bit, stabilised the team in the Premier League with Harry Redknapp, very charismatic manager, and looked at it and went, okay, that's as far as I can go. And he sold it to a group of Russians. Sasha Gaidamak was the front man of that. And it was effectively found out that basically he was using illicit money to fund Portsmouth, effectively. His father was linked to gun running in the Angolan Civil War, if you want to completely go that far. So he had all this money. So we didn't spend a lot on transfer fees, but big wages. I'm talking 6-figure wages a week for some
Mhm.
players, even at the time in the mid 2000s. But they were the top international players who were playing for countries.
Mhm.
Osama Diarra, another one. Jermaine Defoe later on. Peter Crouch, Sonny Montari. Again, so many good players. And eventually, he lost interest or something happened over there and turned the taps off. And from there, there weren't the financial restrictions at the time to protect clubs from basically unscrupulous owners buying the club, pretending they had money when they didn't. And that's what happened. Pompey had 2 or 3 owners around that Premier League time before we got relegated, bottom of the table, in 2010. Got to an FA Cup final, though, somehow. And I was able to actually go to that FA Cup final, even though he lost. So that was by the by. So because there was no restrictions, we ended up getting another owner in the Championship, a Lithuanian owner. And effectively, he pumped a load of money in, but effectively didn't pay off the debts and just kicked them down the road all the way through. So he kicked all the debts into the further afield, put a lot of money again into player wages, try and get us back up. So in the first Championship season, we finished about mid-table, then went into administration again when he was arrested. And I think he's still in prison for tax fraud, bank issues, financial problems, and other things. Lots of videos on YouTube detail Pompey's fall, if you want for a better word, much better than I'm doing. I'm doing this in like a quick 5-minute sum up. So from there, Pompey got relegated to League One, points deduction, got relegated in the first season of League One where basically there was no money whatsoever. And the club was about half an hour away from going bust completely. In the same way that Bordeaux have recently, just off face of the earth, you'd have to create a new club, start from possibly the lowest ebb in English football. So that would be like level 8, 9, or 10. So all the way down. It would take years to even get back into the Football League again. But the fans themselves, Portsmouth Sports Trust, saved the club. So from there, we're in League Two, first season, which was, off the top of my head, 2013-14, I think. Around 2013-2014, first season League Two. And we had no money. But we were a club still. So we're signing players who nobody else wanted, putting the team together. First couple of seasons, one season we got relegated, but stayed in League Two. Then got a good manager together, had a structure, brought in a lot of good players, got promoted to League One. Then we stayed in League One for about 7 years, 7 seasons. A lot of that was down to a new manager, Michael Eisner, obviously linked to Disney fame. He's the owner now, bought the club in the first season of League One. And he went through like the stereotypical run of American owners buying English clubs, but he wasn't going to throw money at it. He was the stereotypical sensible American investor. He was looking at the stadium, he was looking at facilities, he was looking at all these things. And there are arguments that he wasn't putting as much money in as he could have gone into the playing staff. And effectively, he put too much trust in a manager called Kenny Jackett. Lost in the playoffs to get promoted twice. He got sacked in the season after COVID. Brought in another manager, had a transitional season, which American fans of sports franchises probably are used to that, but over in England, it's not a thing. So the fans had to put up with that. Finished mid-table again, upper mid-table. Then he got that manager, Stanley Cowley. He got sacked the following season, and now we got the club that we know now. So John Messino as the manager, Rich Hughes as director of football. John Messino was a coach at Oxford United at the time, so a complete left field managerial pick, and all the fans were worried at the time. But then he went on to have an unforgettable season where Pompey lost 5 games all season, got promoted top of the pile. Excellent side. They played incredibly well and had a really good. I liked the style of play, really. A mixture of, it was a very adaptable side, a mixture of technical players who can control possession, but then weren't like dogmatic about possession and short passing. They would play a bit more direct if they had to against certain teams. Had a whirlwind season, got promoted, and now all of that, now we're adjusting to a new league where the setup is completely different. So that's it in about 5 minutes. But like I said, if Sheffield United fans listen to this, or Americans who don't know the background, there are plenty of YouTube videos that go even in more detail about the financial stuff and the fall of Portsmouth at the time as much. And it was weird going through that experience being quite young. I remember going to school sometimes thinking, would I be supporting a football club the next day?
Yeah.
Possibly in a similar way that, for example, I know some of my friends who are American who support franchises who moved.
Yeah.
and they've just completely gone, vanished completely in another city. But Portsmouth wouldn't even had that. Going to school thinking, would I even support another team? What would happen? I think one game I went to in Championship first season, it was away to Hull City, where it was another liquidation flat, and there was no guarantee that Portsmouth would even play the game after that game that I went to. So that sums it up due to financial negligence and lack of protections of owners who apparently had money and didn't. I think, to sum it up, really, one of the owners we had in the Premier League never actually appeared physically in person. The league got sent a picture of him, and that was it. And he was able to, apparently people linked to him, able to buy the club and not fund it properly and all that sort of thing. The FA Cup, which we won in 2008, the actual trophy was found in a caravan because essentially all the assets that the club had at the time sold it, and the club and the Sports Trust had to find all of them. So the replica FA Cup that we had in 2008, which the side won and kept, it was found in like a caravan somewhere because they flogged it, basically. So
insane, man. It's just it blows my mind. And you know, we're talking 15 years ago when it, you know, we think we have the wild west now in like in terms of the Premier League and stuff like that. But
it's a different sort of Wild West.
Oh yeah, it's 100%. Back then they didn't do any screening. I mean, you know, it's kind of boils down to, you know, some of the issues with you know, you see in the championship, you know, this team and this team, you know, they had Derby County's, you know, the same situation. They went the same. They didn't fall as far as Pompey, in, you know, they got it straightened out because of the regulation and everything. But once they got, it's like, how in the hell do you let these owners in without digging deep into their finances? Thank God they're finally doing it now. But such a historic club in Pompey, within a half hour of going out of, you know, existence. And the same with Derby. When I talked to the Derby guys last week, they were like, they said they were down to like a day and they were going to be out of business. And then somebody came in and bought the club, and then, you know, they're up on the upswing. But it's just, it's a whirlwind. And I just, it doesn't matter. You know, I don't ever want to see what happened to Bury, Macclesfield.
Currently, what's going on at Reading, that takeover.
Yeah, what's going on with Reading at the minute? Bolton had to go through it too.
All sorts. And it's the thing at the moment is, I think Portsmouth was a bit of a different case because they had multiple owners at the same time who said they had money and didn't, and were charlatans. Yeah. At the moment, you're simply, and with Reading as an example, that owner did have money, but then got bored of it. He was Chinese. Yeah. Chinese government said, "Oh, you don't invest in money in football anymore," and just cut it, and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
But recently, you're seeing, like in Derby's case, like in Sheffield Wednesday's case, who got relegated to League One, got promoted. You simply have teams gambling everything to get promoted, because once you get promoted, arguably, the millions of pounds that you'll get, and you'll get parachute payments if you go back down again. And there was a recent redo of the Football League and Premier League deal, where I think next season, if you stay in the Championship, you basically get an extra 15 million quid in TV revenue and all sorts, and parachute payments stay. But ultimately, that's golden ticket. Even if you go back down again, you get 3 years of steady millions of pounds.
Yeah,
our owners aren't going to do that. They're not going to go completely ridiculous. But obviously, you're going to have that point where sides are against others, where the disparity in money is ridiculous. And then because of that, the players that teams like Pompey and Derby can field are not going to be as good as the teams that Burnley, Leeds can field, because it's just clubs operating at a different level, effectively.
Exactly. Okay, back to Saturday. How does it go? How bad do you beat us? 4, 5, 6-0?
You're being very... I don't know how you're being this down on Sheffield United, because I'm looking at this side and thinking, how many of those players would I want to play for Portsmouth? So many good individual quality players. Gustavo Hamer, brilliant player. He brought in Callum O'Hare in the summer? He's an exceptional player. I watched him in the Championship an awful lot. I'll just quickly have this might upset all there a tiny bit. Just go down this list of players. And I'm looking at this. Harrison Burrows from League One, I actually like that signing. I don't think it would have worked for Portsmouth because the fullbacks here would have had to defend a bit more. But since Sheffield United are going to be on top of teams a lot, he's a very creative player. And you'll be fine with him. That's a lovely bit of business. The way that I see it is, what question for you? How does Sheffield United play? What's the style under Chris Wilder?
So it's weird in a sense because you would think with all those players, I think yesterday against Derby and Preston were the only two games where we really controlled the possession. It's been a much more, and I think we're going to try to do it against Pompey on Saturday. We're going to try and possess the ball more. Where we played against like Norwich and Watford, I mean, Hull a little bit. We controlled the ball, possessed the ball more. But I've said it countless numbers of times. This division this year isn't very good from top to bottom. The teams are all good, or are I want to say the parity is much more closer in this division this year than when we were in it a couple of years ago, and it was us and Burnley just barnstorming the division and running away with it. I don't think there's any great teams. I think there's a handful of good teams, and I think in Sheffield United's case, like yesterday, we only beat Derby 1-0, but Derby never laid a glove on us. Never came within. I mean, they hit the post once, but other than that, they didn't touch us. And I feel in the games that we've drawn in Norwich and in QPR, I just feel like the teams in the 3 goals that we've conceded this year, I consider the 2 that QPR got were lucky, and the one it was against Norwich was just a through ball to Josh Sargent. He just didn't miss. When you have 1-on-1 against a keeper, you shouldn't miss. I just think these. It's hard to say because I say on every one of these previews, this is going to be a draw. I can see a draw, but we're gonna try and possess the ball, and if you let us have the ball, we will. But there's gonna be a spell of the game where you guys are gonna have a good fair bit of the ball. And I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I just kind of summed up Sheffield United in a bottle through 6 games this season. And do I give Pompey a chance? Yes, I give them more of a chance than probably you're going to give. I just this division is hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And on your day, you can beat
any side in the championship can beat any other side.
That's why I love this division.
Even with the differences. But if there's going to be a rebound from the players, I think, because this is the first time in a long time that essentially the Portsmouth players got a dressing gown from the manager due to how they lost against Burnley. So you're going to have that mental thing as a rebound. Pompey are comfortable in possession as well. With 2 centre-halves that like to play the ball. I think they found the midfield partnership with Mullenpack and Freddie Potts now. So they like to be on the ball. They cover for each other in defensive situations. And the entire aim is to get the ball to the front 4. And with the front 4, you'll have Christian Sadie probably up front, depending on fitness, because Cassini Yengi is probably going to be our first choice striker for the season, because the guy who scored all the goals in League One, Colby Bishop, 20-plus goals, excellent striker. It was found he had a potential half defect during pre-season. It came up in a routine scan. So he's not selected in the squad until January. He's out completely. And fans are like debating when Colby Bishop can come back. But in my head, they should probably plan that he won't be there for the rest of the season, because there's no way you're rushing back somebody from a heart condition. So that's how it is. He went through successful surgery and he's going to be fine. And lots of other players have had similar things. I think Connor Goldson who played for Rangers centre-half, he was possibly one who went through a similar thing. So that's the gap. That's one of our major gaps now, that we don't have that striker who's got that long pedigree of goals. So we'll say if it's Christian Sadie up front, since he played up against Burnley, he's basically an attacking midfielder playing up front. He offers a lot. He's big. He's very physical. can drive play forward when in possession, can support the front three behind him because he's playing a 4-2-3-1, but he doesn't have the killing instinct of a striker that other strikers have.
Mm.
We do have an attacking fielder, Callum Lang, who's scored a lot of goals. He's a proper goal threat. Paddy Lane as well, and Jacob Murphy, who are all quite similar, where they all want to get on the ball. They want to dive into the penalty area for crosses and shots. Very aggressive front three. Tiny bit of lack of creativity there, because if you think about the pattern of play with football, you want the creative players in the middle passing between each other, and then one killer through ball to an attacker who loves to have a shot on goal, right? So with those three players behind the striker, they all kind of want to do the same thing, but they showed against Burnley that they can link up okay with each other. So really, out of possession, they're going to press Sheffield United a lot, try win the ball back out of the pitch, and then try and have a 4-on-3 to get the goals that way. They can have possession and are quite comfortable with it. But if there are sustained periods of time where they don't have possession and lose control of the game an awful lot, like we've seen against Burnley, Middlesbrough, Leeds United, sides that like to have that sort of thing, then there are going to be problems, and Sheffield United will probably score goals. I can't predict a Pompey defeat. I'm probably going to go with a 1-1 draw, and that's more my heart. That's more my heart rather than my head, to be quite frank. Because again, looking at the sort of players that Sheffield United have, we mentioned a lot of them. A lot of them have the quality to score a goal out of nothing, and Pompey don't have that. If Pompey are actually going to score and maintain the lead, it's basically going to be a team effort between all of them. Effectively, it's going to be a nice, neat bit of play, like the goal Pompey scored against Burnley, like you watched. That's basically how Pompey are going to score all their goals. Have the ball down the wing, try and make an overload, neat couple of passes between each other, and then there's an attacker from about 6 or 7 yards out unmarked, slots it into the corner. There's probably not going to be someone who can hit a ball on the sixpence 25 yards out who can stick it into the top corner. That's probably not how Pompey are going to go about it. So no, I've gone with a 1-1 draw. I'm being very positive with that, to be quite frank.
I don't think you're too far off. I honestly see it as a goalless draw. I think we're due for one, and you guys would consider it a victory if you keep us off the scoreboard, and then if you keep your shape at the back, don't let anything in. I mean, because
I think Pompey fans would be happy with a draw, but the angst about not winning a game yet and being second bottom, that will continue into the next couple of months. Yeah. So as long as it's not a defeat, I think Pompey fans will take it.
Yeah.
But if it's 3 points by any manner of means, that's excellent, and Pompey can be up with the lower to mid-table sides again.
Yeah, yeah. One last question. I ask this to every opposition view that I have on the Red Half of Sheffield preview pod. Freddie, your match day beverage. What's your go-to match day beverage?
It depends, really. If it's a home game, we have a brewery outside the ground, which you go to an awful lot that basically brews its own IPA and its own beer. So if it's a home game, I go there. I am partial to a Bovril. I'm not sure if you know what a Bovril is in America, but it's a bit that is a winter staple, but it has to be a pint, doesn't it? That's my go-to one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Freddie, tell the folks that are watching and listening to this where they can find the podcast.
So the PO4Cast is all audio only. So it's all on the major podcast networks: Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, all those usual places you'll be able to find them. And we're also on pretty much every single major social media, mainly Twitter and Instagram as our major ones. We have a link with a page called Pompey News Now, which is like a news page that sometimes does its own thing, but retweets the podcast and everything else. So if you look at those places, you can find us, and we usually record on Wednesdays and publish the podcast around Thursday or Friday. That way we can get the most up-to-date news we can ahead of Saturday's match, but also digest anything that goes on midweek as well. So you can find us all on there. And then, if you're free, Chad, you could join us on Wednesday.
Yes, I might stay tuned. I might make a guest appearance on the podcast. If you haven't done so, Red Half of Sheffield, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you can find us on all that. Me, C Jarvis_13. And until the next match day preview, I will leave you with Up the Blades.